Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabados of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
And I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and my column talks about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And one part of government, you might say, are the unions. And we have two guests with us today who are both union members, union organizers, union leaders. Bill Ritchie from the Capital District Area Labor Federation, and Mark Emanation, who is with Citizens Action, not Citizens Union, but Citizens Action, and also with the Capital District Area Labor Federation. So both of you, Bill, welcome back to the Jewish View, and
Thank
Mark,
you.
welcome to the Jewish
Thank
View.
you very much.
Just Mark, we go back a long way, Mr. Emanation and myself over here in a previous reincarnation, that it was for many years a good teacher, and I would almost say the kids actually liked him. I would almost say one of the best teachers Maimonides Hebrew Day School ever had. And the kids loved him, they learned from him, and so we're old friends from a different time.
It was a wonderful experience. I did it for 10 years. On the best days, there was no difference between the teacher and the students. We were all learning together.
And what did you teach with him?
Social studies, mostly U.S. history and government, but I dabbled with world history, which I always felt like I was a chapter ahead of them. But U.S. history and government, occasionally I taught civics, and one time, and they only allowed me to do it once, I taught economics.
But you never taught unionization.
No, we talked about unions during the course of, and the labor struggles.
Samuel Gompers and all
Well,
that.
there's a very strong, and as you folks probably well know, tradition of Jewish activism in the trade unions. I used to be a member and a worker for the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union, which was led by Jack Schenkman, and there was a whole tradition that came out of the needle trades and other things that came from that I always appreciated greatly. So we would discuss those things in the course of teaching U.S.
I
history.
said on a previous show, but my grandmother, may she rest in peace, was one of the first community organizer for the
Ladies' garment workers.
lady
Oh, right,
garment worker. One of
ILGW.
her friends who actually died, because few women died actually, and was one of her friends. I remember still when I grew up, she had these aprons, what's the
ILGW.
ILGW.
I remember she always had that on her. That was her. So you're right. Mark just mentioned Samuel Gompers. His father was a rabbi, and you're right. The original labor leaders, a lot of them were Jewish.
And wasn't there a tie between Eastern European Jews coming over here and socialization, socialism, and the unions? And,
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, as you both know, the United States of America is not that old of a country in relationship to the rest of the world. And tons of people came over in the 1840s that brought a lot of traditions from labor and from socialism and from working cooperatively, which is how I sort of like to think of it in its best form, and came here and brought those traditions with them. And that spread out through the whole 1800s and then to the, probably up to the years where the Second World War, and probably even a little bit after that.
And does it? I don't usually bring in presidential politics, but does this have any modern day example in Bernie Sanders?
Well, I mean, obviously Bernie Sanders.
He's Jewish.
Yep.
He's socialist, and
yeah.
is he pro-union?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely,
Sure.
right.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I think he's a different sort of socialist, though, I mean, in the 30s, when the FDR was really struggling to get legislation passed, I mean, at that time, from what I understand, many of the leaders of the socialist and the communist movement in this country, which was much bigger than many people know about, I think, were in fact Jewish leaders, right? And their affiliation was, I think, to socialist formations, which were a little more ordered, perhaps, than we would expect today, But nevertheless, he's been doing good work. I'll say that for him, right?
well, were you both Bernie Sanders supporters, or are you Hillary Clinton supporters? I'm just curious. You don't have to elaborate. I'm just curious.
Well, we have to sort of be careful because our organization endorses candidates, right? And the situation right now is that recommendations have been forwarded to the state AFL-CIO with respect to candidates. And although I will say that the AFL has endorsed Hillary Clinton, but as far as the local candidates are concerned, that will not be information that will be released probably until the very end of August.
Right, but I'm just saying, as far as Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, I mean, were you personally Bernie Sanders fans? Were you out there doing what all the other Sanders people were doing in terms of getting the vote out and stuff?
Well, I will say that I did some work for Bernie Sanders, and I thought that the agenda that he was putting forth was the agenda we truly need in this country, quite honestly. I think that as far as the establishment and the establishment Democrats are concerned, there is a definite opportunity, or was anyway, to really energize the party using the enthusiasm which is countrywide and which I think was really obvious last night as I was watching the part of the convention. I mean, people there are really heavily committed to change. Now, not everybody, but there certainly was an element, and a good-sized element, I'd say, of people who want to see change, not just in the Democratic Party, but in the country as a whole.
And Mark, what about you?
So I worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign millions of years ago when I was younger, thinner, and had a full head of hair, when he was running for mayor of Burlington.
Wow.
And not when he was running. I went up a couple times and helped, but right afterwards, he was attacked, and including death threats and things after he got elected. And they said he had no right to be there because he was Jewish. He had no right to be there because he was a socialist and he wasn't born in Vermont. So they were using all of those things. And we went up and built a great big rally saying, let democracy stand, basically. This was a democratic vote, let the thing stand, and supported him. I went to the rally here in Albany at the Washington Armory. My wife, who's very not much interested in politics, that was one of the first rallies she wanted to. She wanted to go hear his message. My kids were interested in it. Their friends were interested. So for those reasons, I thought it was very good that he was opening up a discussion about what is possible in America.
There you go, from an education standpoint.
Yes, that's exactly
that's
what
your education part
right.
of you.
What is possible in America? What can we do to make a better world? And I'm for that discussion. I think that no matter what happens in November, local elections, statewide and national, we're going to wake up the day after Election Day and the day after the inauguration, and we're going to have many of the same challenges, problems, and issues, and we're going to need to figure out how to work together to try to make a world where our children and grandchildren feel like they have something good. I have 3 kids. They're all in the process of getting married and stuff like that, and we want grandchildren. Everyone, you know what I mean? And it's like, I want a world where it's healthy, safe, happy, and productive for them.
And you can have that without Bernie Sanders.
Well, I think no matter who gets elected, we're going to still have some of the same challenges. I saw Mr. Trump's speech, and he said, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, you should probably sit down with President Obama and say, it wasn't that easy to do that because we have the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate and the Supreme Court and all sorts of things here. It's not, we don't have a dictatorial society where the president can go in and say,
yeah, but it's the art of the deal.
Well, maybe so. Maybe so.
Yeah.
I know you talk about social studies. The president's social studies teacher of Maimonides, thought it was a great education besides, whatever side you're on. I mean, just the American process is incredible. And the primaries and coming to Albany, coming to New York State #1, coming to Albany #2, and she brought all the kids, and she just wasn't holding by anybody, but just said, brought them to the Trump rally because she could get tickets at the Times Union Center. And my daughter really thought, they see the process, you see on TV. People aren't always part of the process.
Right.
You make one little vote, or actually 50% of America doesn't vote anyway. So you see how involved they are. Right. So just the idea to get involved in the process, that itself, whatever you hold by, like you say, it's a democratic country. You hold by whoever you hold by. That's the situation. That's the country we live in. But at least participate, to learn to learn about the issues and participate.
Yeah, to get back to your point, Mark, about whether it will be Bernie or not leading this particular movement, I think Bernie is right when he says it's not about Bernie and it's not about Hillary. I mean, the real deal is it's about the American people and what they are going to be capable of doing and how long they can maintain the effort. And I think that come the inauguration, it's going to be a challenge, but I mean, people are sufficiently roused, and I believe also that the conditions under which we are living today are producing these responses. So I don't see this resistance to establishment policy going away at all.
I always say in politics and government, we all, no matter what stripe you are politically, we all want good government, we all want good elections, we all want good education, good clean environment, good ethics, all the E's, right? And but it's the means to the end that makes us different in terms of Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Green Party or whatever. And I think that it's the means to the end that will make the difference, and that's what people are fighting about. It's the means to the end. We all want to see the same thing at the end. Yes, it's all about having a good America, but how do we get there?
So
I agree.
One of the things I learned at Maimonides, where I was an outsider in a certain sense when I showed up, right? I come from a different tradition, and I was learning and trying to figure, how do I fit into this thing? And people made me feel welcome because I was part of a larger human family. And so I look at all this stuff as like human solidarity and a real neighbor from the smallest to the largest. So I look at the problems of the world, where a quarter of our world tonight is going to heat their homes and cook their food with firewood, when half of our world put their kids to bed hungry, and they're a fear of war, or in wars, or a refugee from a war. I look at all of those huge, huge problems, and I say, how do I fit in, not as an American, or a Democrat, or Republican, or a socialist, or all of the things that you just said, or even as a person that's trying to help trade unions. I look at it as, how do I, as a human being, work with other human beings to make good righteous work and to try to make things better. And I think that that's important because I think a lot of people that were attracted to both sides of these debates. I spent time in West Virginia during a miners' strike in 1980 and 81 running a soup kitchen. And I saw those miners standing up in West Virginia, and they want jobs to take care of their little ones and their elderly. I saw that with the folks that were down here in Albany. My wife was from the border of Vermont and New York side of it. She brought 3 childhood friends, all in their 50s and early 60s that came, and they had never been to a political rally before, and they wanted jobs and a place to take care of their elderly and their young. And to me, that's sort of, as we go to bed tonight, that's sort of, no matter where we go into bed in the world, what we want. So how do we do that? And I think sometimes human solidarity starts with solidarity in our own neighborhoods, with our trade unions if we're on strike, like the poor folks that are up in Green Island, or it could sometimes start as me saying to somebody that I don't know, hello.
Okay, so let me just, you mentioned about the strike.
Well, that's what I wanted to say also, bring it home to the Capital District, but your union issues.
And it seems to me when I was looking back at the past couple of years, and looking back on your background, is that there's a lot of strikes that are going on around here that maybe you folks, the union side doesn't feel like there's a whole lot right in this area. So you're striking in probably 4 or 5. I mean, I remember Amsterdam and the nurses, and there was, you had Green Island. You said, I don't know what were you striking there, but you had a bunch of, about 5, 6 different strikes in the past couple of years that you were on picket lines for. I remember, what was it, Verizon?
Sure, absolutely,
So what's going on? I mean, do we have a strong State of the Union? Do we have a strong union in presence in this area?
I think we have a pretty strong union presence, to be honest with you, particularly with the initiation of the Capital District Area Labour Federation, right? Now, I'm involved with the Albany County Central Federation of Labour,
Right.
which is the local labour council, right? And we're pretty active, and we've been involved with a series of strikes, a series of strike support actions, right? With the CWA, for example, the Communication Workers of America, and their strike at Verizon, right, which turned out to be very, very successful from the perspective of the workers, frankly, right, and
good.
proved the fact that strikes work. But I would add to that, under certain conditions, in the sense that while the workers were absolutely solid for the length of that 45-day strike, right, they were not only supported by themselves within their union, but also, and I believe this was a very serious miscalculation on the part of the Verizon management, they were also supported, I totally believe, by the community outside the labour movement itself. But to get back to your question, which was about the health of the labour movement in the Capital District, right?
The state of the union.
The state of our unions.
That's right.
I think we're moving ahead, but I mean the strikes that we're involved with, or the union support activities that we're involved with, didn't necessarily originate in the Capital District, and I think the Honeywell situation, which is taking place in Green Island right now.
Tell us about it, because I keep up with the media. I mean, man, not as much as Marky's the reporter, but you don't even hear about it.
Well, I think of Honeywell as being the thermostat that you turn on.
There are lots of things, believe me.
So one thing that, for 5 years I worked for Citizen Action and loved it. Recently I got asked to be the senior field coordinator for the Capital District Area Labor Federation, which is a federation of all of the trade unions in 10 counties that
Did you
surround here.
leave?
Yes,
Citizen
but I'm
Action?
still a member and a good friend.
Oh,
and,
but you're not employed. Oh,
but I'm-
because on
but-
your Facebook page it still says that you're
yeah,
there.
no, but, I'll get to
You got
that.
a line on this guy, man, right?
So Honeywell, I thought the same thing
Yeah,
when I
two
heard
jobs.
that these poor workers in Green Island, 41 of them, and there used to be thousands of United Auto
That's
workers in Green Island. The Bendix company had over 1,000, Ford had almost 2,000, made radiators, they're all gone.
Where did they go? What, Mexico or the South? Because they're always talking about
Absolutely, that's exactly. If you see, sometimes you'll see a commercial assembled with pride in the United States, that the parts are not made any longer in the United States. The Fords are assembled with pride here, but they're made in other places.
And you know what? I always go on the UAW website to find out what cars they so-called endorse before I buy a car. I choose from that list.
Sure.
And but there's still UAW workers in Mexico and Canada, in other places in the United States here that have Honda or some other foreign Japanese cars that are made here. So
Right.
I just wanted to let you know that.
Right.
And
Okay,
I feel
cool, all right.
a
Good.
kinship here.
Yeah, all right.
So Honeywell, we know them from the thermostats,
Right.
but Honeywell over the last 3 decades has branched out to all sorts of things. They make in Green Island brakes for jets and other airplanes.
Oh.
That's what they make. Highly specialized. The workers are all vetted and approved by the Homeland Security, because they make things for the military.
Right.
And they, make a decent salary. They work really hard. For many years, they worked with asbestos until they took asbestos out of it, because they realized that it was really hurting these workers. Many of these workers' family members who work there have died of cancer or fought their way through a battle with cancer. Some of them are doing it right now. Honeywell also made the PFOA. And ran that plant up in Hoosick Falls for 30 years and got out, then gave it to St. Cobain, but they did it for 30 years, and they paid studies that hid that it was a carcinogen and where they were putting it. Honeywell makes cluster bombs, which we no longer use in the United States, but they still manufacture them for countries that still use them, which are very bad anti-women and children type bombs. And so it makes a lot of profit. It pays its CEO last year $33 million. The CEO is going to step down. David Cody is his name. He's going to get a retirement package of $168 million. I raise these things because what these workers were offered in this contract, the 41 there and the 350 out in South Bend, Indiana, they were offered a contract that said we're going to make you pay 80% of your health care. We're eliminating, no matter how many hours you work, overtime, jobs classification, 80% of pensions, survivor benefits if you get sick and you pass away, the survivor benefits, health care for pensioners, it was at least all of these other things that made it really impossible for them to take. Imagine if this week you're paying 20% of your health care and next week you're paying 80%.
4 times more. Yeah.
And so the workers, they were still under the previous contract. It hadn't expired, said, we can't accept this, and they locked them out and replaced them with workers who are brought in from all over the place who haven't been vetted by Homeland Security or trained. The first batch of 4,000 breaks they turned in, these replacement workers, which union people call scabs, these 4,000 breaks, 150 were accepted. Well, I don't want to be on the airplane that has those breaks. I don't want, I'm a peaceful person and I've always been for peace and I'm for peace. But you don't want the military to go up there with planes that don't have brakes. I don't want those kinds of things. These workers they didn't go on strike. They were locked out. They got to work and they were thrown out. And while still the contract was in effect. And so they've been out as of today, 80 days.
Wouldn't that be illegal? Can't you just go to court? And you
Not
know, if
any
you have
longer.
a contract.
Not
then-
any longer in the United States of America,
Really?
Rabbi, but it should be. It should be. And I look at these workers. I've walked in the sun with them. Bill has walked in the sun with them. We did a big rally of a bunch of folks to help them. We've raised a bunch of money for them. But I look at them. They're like hard-working people, and that's the rub with me. If you work hard, you should be able to take care of your families. In the richest country, not in the world, but in the history of the world.
Well, so what's your message out of Honeywell? Just you're telling them to come back to the table so you could renegotiate a fair contract?
I believe that our elected representatives on the federal level, Schumer and Gillibrand and Tonko and Gibson and Stefanik and all of those folks, should say to the Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, and to this, that these people Honeywell should go back to the table, end the lockout, have these workers go back and negotiate in good faith.
It sounds like there wasn't any negotiating at the table to begin with.
And
It
there
was
hasn't-
just Honeywell dictum,
They
and he just
they
said,
handed out and they said, this is our last and best offer.
And you know,
take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
So
And when
the
they
workers
said,
left.
well, no, the workers
Well, I know.
rejected it, and so
Right.
they were locked out
Right.
before even the contract was over. And that's the story with what's happening in a lot of places in America. And then how do you take care of yourself?
right. I mean, this is there's no mistakes being made by Honeywell here. This is very much their standard playbook, series of activities when they get involved with strikes. This has happened before at other plants, you know. And I think the Verizon strike was unique in a sense that the involvement of Thomas Perez, who is the Secretary for Labor,
Yeah.
from what I can understand, really helped that process along. So there might well be
The process,
the process of negotiation.
okay.
It may well be the case that the federal government could be intervening here at some time pretty soon. As Mark says, these people have been out without a single penny of salary
But 80
for 90 days. 80
What are
days.
they doing?
They're
What are they doing?
They're maintaining a 24/7 picket line.
Yes, but for 80 days without having any income, how are they feeding their family and isn't?
Well, because they were locked out, they were able to collect unemployment. So, because they were locked out, not go on strike. If you go on strike, you don't get unemployment. But if you're locked out while you're still, you get
So when they
unemployment.
filed their claim and the state labor department sent the claims to Honeywell to verify it, Honeywell said, yes, we locked them out. So
so
now
they're-
they're getting
so
their
they're collecting
unemployment benefit.
unemployment.
Are they getting food stamps? Are they getting
So
other benefits?
they're getting help from the Regional Food Bank and the Labor Religion Coalition set up a thing so they could get their money go further by going to the Regional Food Bank,
Yeah.
which I used to take Maimonides students to volunteer with me, and they are getting their medical coverage through their union. The United Auto Workers are covering their medical
So then
coverage.
they didn't have to go on Obamacare?
And
Ironically?
some of them, I believe, didn't have to go on Obamacare, but other members of their families that they were like helping and taking care of. And then the other thing is that we've raised a whole bunch of money. We raised $1,300 last week, $1,000,
correct, yep.
$6,000 at the rally to help them through the things because it's hard times. October, they run out of unemployment.
Right.
And so then what happens? But that's not even it. If you're somebody that for 25 years got up every morning and went to work
Yeah.
and took pride in your work, you ran a complicated machine, you learned how to do it, you did it well.
It's the psychology.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it plays with it. They may not even want to go back to this place if you get a contract together. They might say, look, these are bad people. I don't want to work for them.
Well, I'm not sure of that, but I do know one thing growing up in Waterville East. When I grew up in Waterville East, we had tons of jobs, good jobs.
Yeah, well,
And we don't any longer. And so every one of these factories that closes down, it makes a town or a village that's around it crumble.
yeah, but aren't these people out there looking for other work? Don't they, being on unemployment, don't they have to go to the unemployment
Sure.
office and say, I'd looked for
Right.
work? And
But if you're making $50,000 a year as a manufacturer with the benefits, you don't need to take a job at McDonald's yet. You know what I mean?
no, but
So-
you can go look for another job.
Oh no,
as a-
Mark, they're going to look for other jobs. There's not tons of other jobs out there for what they do. If you learned how to run this machine to make these brakes, we don't make a lot of stuff here any longer. These are
Right,
some of the
but
last
aren't they looking
manufacturing
outside
jobs.
of the area?
Well, I don't
They're going to
know.
have to move and
They,
work
they,
elsewhere?
they may, I don't know.
You know, that's the alternative. I mean, this.
But I mean,
look
that's
at it-
the assumption you're making is that there are jobs, quote, in other areas. There's nothing to say that the job market is any better anywhere else, you know? Although, admittedly, Green Island is a municipality which has suffered greatly because of the
Right.
closure of the Ford plant there, which made radiators, as Mark was pointing out earlier on, right? So I don't see that necessarily as an alternative for these guys. I mean, what I found out from walking the picket line with these guys, and by the way, in our support for them, what we're doing is we're encouraging all the local unions and our members, delegates who come to our Labour Council, to be at that picket line once a week from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock every Thursday until this thing is resolved.
I wanted just to ask you, because we're close on time.
Yeah.
What is TPP and why do you want to stop it?
Okay. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is
Say slower.
okay. It's a
Trans-Pacific Partnership.
partnership.
All right,
Sorry,
all right.
I didn't mean to.
No, it's just I didn't catch it.
That's all
Okay.
right.
Well, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is an attempt on the part of corporate America to rework the framework of global trade for the benefit of corporate America at the expense of the rest of America. I mean, that would sum it up.
What do you base that on?
I'll base that on the fact that these trade agreements, such as NAFTA or the Korea
Right.
Free Trade Agreement, began by legislators who made all sorts of rash promises about jobs. The North American Free Trade Agreement ended up by displacing 800,000 workers. The accession of China into the World Trade Organization ended up by costing us, in this country, 3.2 million jobs. And the Korea Free Trade Agreement ended up costing us 75,000 jobs, right? And here we have a very similar situation. The TPP is modeled to a great extent on these previous non-profitable, as far as American workers are concerned, models, right? And for example, Buy America. If the TPP is actually adopted, which I doubt, by the way, it will be, given what I'm seeing over the last couple of days, and I'm hoping over the last couple of days, but if it is adopted, for example, Buy America, which was something initiated in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
You know, for municipalities and government agencies to buy American products before they reach out for a foreign product, ensuring that jobs for Americans are created. If the TPP comes into effect, Buy America and even Buy Local can be challenged under a dispute settlement. It's called the ISDS. And basically what it says is this, that any foreign corporation can challenge a corporation here or a municipality if, in fact, by adopting regulations such as environmental regulations, right, which would preclude that foreign company from making an expected amount of profit, then the American municipality can be sued. And they can be sued, and the authority of the ISDS is such that it supersedes American law and it supersedes American opinion, even the Supreme Court.
So who wants this in the United States?
One of the people who want this really badly is Barack Obama. And what we hear is that he wants this, you know, for his legacy, right? Frankly, I could give two flips about his legacy, you know? I mean, I do like the man on many levels, but he has made a very, very serious error here. He is betraying the American working class, top to bottom. And that's what's happening. And I have no hesitation in saying that, you know? It's just, I don't want to take up too much time,
Right.
but there are serious...
We're out of time.
Well, I have one more thing to add, ask you about. When you were here last time, Bill,
Yeah.
I asked you about this Labor Council representatives.
Yeah,
And the Albany one was vacant.
Yes.
Who's filled it?
We filled it about a week after that meeting,
And-
actually,
and who?
with Wayne McMahon, who
Is he still
I
there?
said, he's still there, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Oh, solid as a rock.
All right.
Yeah, we're going strong, man, I'll tell you.
Want to fill that little space in
Yeah,
that
well,
little void
that's
there.
okay.
So,
All right, well, we want to thank you very much. It's always tune in with the unions, you know, of course, that there's the people, it's working, and
Right.
the working person in the workforce, and I think it's important with the work you're doing. So I want to thank you for both for being on, and thank Mr. Emanation for being the teacher for in public for all my kids and the students of Maimonides.
I always say history was easier when I was in school because there was less of it.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much for having us, right?
Continued success.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's cool.